When aliens learn that Earth forces retirement just means they no longer need approval. To the morning sun shone through the windows of Frank Miller's cabin. Frank sat on his porch with a cup of coffee in his hand. He looked at the mountains in the distance. 3 weeks had passed since his retirement ceremony. After 40 years in Earth's combined space fleet, he had given up his command of the ECS Dauntless. At age 63, he thought his days of space travel and military action were behind him. Frank's quiet morning changed when his communication device buzzed. The screen showed a name he knew well, Linda Powell, the Secretary of Defense and his friend for many years. "Frank, are you watching the news?" Linda's voice sounded worried. Frank looked up at the clear blue sky. "Hard to miss an alien battleship in orbit, Linda. The Galaxian diplomatic ship had arrived yesterday. Every news channel showed pictures of the large dark vessel hovering above Earth. The aliens had come with demands about mining rights in the Proxima Centauri system, the closest star system to Earth. The talks are going badly," Linda said. "The Galaxians refuse to speak with Admiral Henderson. They keep asking for our most experienced commander." Frank sipped his coffee. "Henderson is good at his job." "Henderson has 15 years of experience. You have 40. The Galaxians value experience above all else. Their culture sees older members as the most important." Frank stood up and walked to the edge of his porch. "I'm retired, Linda." "That's exactly my point," Linda said. Frank could hear the small smile in her voice. "You don't need anyone's approval anymore." Frank understood what she meant. When he was an active admiral, he had to follow rules. Every action needed approval from higher-ups, from committees, from politicians. Now, as a retired officer, he was free to act as he thought best. "What do you want me to do?" Frank asked. "Nothing official. Nothing that will appear in any reports. Just have a talk with them. A transport will pick you up in 30 minutes. Frank looked down at his casual clothes. "I'll need to change." "Stay as you are," Linda said. "It's better if this looks completely unofficial." 6 hours later, Frank arrived at the International Space Station. He wore jeans, a flannel shirt, and his old leather jacket. A young officer met him at the airlock. "Admiral Miller, thank you for coming," the officer said. "Just Frank now," he corrected. "I'm retired." The officer led Frank through the station to a meeting room. Inside waited 3 Galaxians. The aliens stood over 7 feet tall with scales that changed colors with their mood. Right now their scales showed deep blue, a sign of distrust, or caution, according to the brief report Frank had read on the transport. The tallest Galaxian stepped forward. "I am Ambassador Kiztax. You are the human called Miller?" Frank nodded. "Frank Miller, retired admiral of Earth's combined space fleet." The ambassador's scales flickered green for a moment. Confusion. "We were told Earth forces its most skilled warriors to retire. This practice makes no sense. Why would you throw away your greatest assets?" Frank smiled. "We don't throw them away, Ambassador. We free them." The 3 Galaxians looked at each other. Their translator devices must have struggled with the concept. "Please explain," said the ambassador. Frank sat down at the table. The Galaxians remained standing. "For 40 years I served Earth. I followed orders. I worked within a chain of command. Every major decision needed approval from people above me. Many good ideas died because of politics or fear." Frank leaned forward. "Now I'm retired. I have all my knowledge, all my experience, but no one can tell me what to do. I don't need permission to speak the truth." The ambassador's scales shifted to purple, surprise or shock. "And what truth do you wish to speak?" "Your claim to the Proxima Centauri mining belt is not valid. Earth ships found those resources first. Earth workers built those mining stations. Earth has defended that system for 20 years. The Galaxian Empire has historical records that show—" Frank held up his hand. "Your records are wrong, or changed, or lies. It doesn't matter. What matters is this. If the Galaxian Empire tries to take those mining stations by force, you will lose." The ambassador's scales flashed red. Anger or threat. You threaten the might of our empire? You, one retired human? Frank shook his head. Not a threat. Just a fact. When I was an active admiral, I would have to use careful words. I would have to suggest possibilities. Now, I can tell you exactly what will happen. Frank stood up and walked to the window. The Earth turned slowly below, beautiful and blue. I know Earth's defense plans. I helped write many of them. I know our true military strength, not just what we show in parades or announcements. I know which retired officers would return to service if called. I know which weapon systems were never made public. Frank turned back to the aliens. Most importantly, I know that thousands of other retired Earth military personnel are just like me, free to act without approval. The second Galaxian spoke, for the first time. One ship cannot defeat an empire. Frank smiled. True, but Earth doesn't have just one ship, and Earth's retired veterans don't just sit in rocking chairs. They work in every part of society. They teach young people. They design new technology. They run businesses. And they talk to each other. Frank's communication device buzzed. He looked at the screen and smiled. For example, Susan Harris, who used to run Earth Intelligence, just sent me information about your fleet movements near Jupiter. Joe Martinez, a retired Marine colonel, reports that your supply ships look low on fuel. Betty Yang, who ran our quantum communications for years, tells me your ship's security systems have 3 major weaknesses. The ambassador's scales shifted rapidly between colors. How do you know these things? Who ordered this information gathered? No one, Frank said. That's my point. No one ordered it. No one approved it. These are just retired people with skills, seeing things that interest them. Frank sat back down. So, Ambassador Kuztax, shall we discuss a fair agreement about Proxima Centauri? Or would you prefer to learn more about what happens when Earth's retired veterans become interested in a problem? The ambassador's scales settled on a pale yellow, the color of careful thought. We will discuss. But this concept of retirement requires more study. It is not what we understood. Frank smiled. Few non-humans understand it. First, on Earth, retirement isn't an end, it's a beginning. When aliens learned that Earth forces retirement just means they no longer need approval. To the meeting with the Galaxians lasted 5 hours. Frank spoke plainly about Earth's claims to the Proxima Centauri mining belt. The aliens listened, with changing colors on their scales. By the end, they agreed to continue talks the next day. As Frank left the meeting room, Linda Powell waited in the hallway. How did it go? She asked. Frank smiled. They're thinking about things differently now. But we need to show them more than just talk. Linda walked with Frank to the station's viewing deck. Earth turned below them, clouds swirling over blue oceans. What do you have in mind? Linda asked. A demonstration, Frank said. The Galaxians respect action more than words. They need to see what retired humans can do. Frank took out his communication device and made 3 calls. The first call went to Susan Harris in California. The second went to Joe Martinez in New Mexico. The third went to Betty Yang on the moon. Just made some calls to old friends. Frank told Linda. Nothing official. Linda understood. Nothing I need to know about then? Nothing that requires your approval, Frank said with a small smile. Linda nodded. I'll make sure your transport is ready for tomorrow's meeting. The Galaxians requested to speak with you again. Not with Admiral Henderson or any active military leader. Just you. Interesting, Frank said. They're learning. That night in his small room on the space station, Frank received updates from his retired friends. Susan's message came first. Information network active. Watching Galaxian ships near Jupiter. They don't know we can see them. Joe's message followed. 20 retired Special Forces operators now at key locations. Just taking vacation time. No orders given or taken. Betty's message came last. Found 3 weak spots in Galaxian communication systems. Could shut them down if needed. Just an interesting puzzle to solve in my free time. Frank smiled as he read the messages. None of these actions were official. No one had ordered them. No committees had approved them, just retired people using their skills because they wanted to. The next morning, Frank walked into the meeting room wearing the same casual clothes. The Galaxian ambassador waited with 2 other aliens. "We have considered your words," Ambassador Kazatak said. "Our empire still believes we have rights to the mining belt." Frank nodded. "I thought you might say that. Perhaps you need more than words to understand our position." The ambassador's scales shifted to dark blue, caution or concern. "What do you mean?" Frank checked his watch, an old mechanical timepiece that had belonged to his grandfather. "In about 30 seconds, your main ship will lose its communication ability for exactly 2 minutes. The ambassador stared at Frank. Then the small device on the alien's wrist began to buzz. One of the other Galaxians spoke quickly in their language. The translator picked up only parts. Ship reports, communications, failure. The ambassador's scales turned bright red. "What have you done?" "I didn't do anything," Frank said calmly. "Betty Yang did. She retired 5 years ago as head of Earth's Quantum Communications Division. Now she grows flowers on the moon and solves puzzles for fun. Your ship's communication system was an interesting puzzle to her." The ambassador's scale shifted between red and purple, anger and shock. "This is an act of aggression." Frank shook his head. "No. This is an act of an individual. Betty doesn't take orders from Earth government anymore. She's retired." The Galaxian stared at Frank. "One retired human can disable our advanced warship?" "For 2 minutes exactly," Frank said. "Betty doesn't want to cause real problems. She just wanted to solve the puzzle." The ambassador's communications device buzzed again. The Galaxian read the message and its scales shifted to yellow. "Your Earth ships are moving near our position at Jupiter," the ambassador said. Frank shook his head. "No official Earth ships have moved. Those are private ships. Many are owned by retired military personnel who enjoy space travel. They happen to take their ships out today." "This is too coordinated to be chance," the ambassador said. Frank smiled. "Susan Harris retired as head of Earth Intelligence 8 years ago. Now she runs a vineyard. But she still talks to her old friends. They share information, no orders given. Just friends talking." The third Galaxian in the room stepped forward. "Our sensors detect humans at key locations near our embassy on Earth. Tourists," Frank said. "Many retired Special Forces members enjoy travel. Joe Martinez, who retired as a Marine colonel, mentioned to some friends that Earth's historical sites are beautiful this time of year." Frank leaned forward. "You see, Ambassador, when humans retire from military service, they don't stop being who they are. They don't forget their skills. They just stop needing permission to use those skills." The ambassador's scales settled on a steady yellow, the color of careful thought. "You claim these are not coordinated military actions?" "They are coordinated," Frank admitted. "But not by military command, not by government orders, just by people who share common goals and values." "And if we were to take action against these retired individuals?" the ambassador asked. Frank's face grew serious. "Then other retired individuals would take notice. Earth has millions of veterans. Most live quiet lives, but all remember their oaths to protect Earth." Frank stood and walked to the window. "Ambassador, the Proxima Centauri mining belt belongs to Earth. We found it. We built it. We defended it. This is not going to change." The ambassador was quiet for a long time. Finally, it spoke. "We wish to speak with your government about a compromise." Frank turned back. "I thought you might. I took the liberty of asking several retired diplomats to prepare some fair options, people who negotiated other treaties but no longer worry about political consequences." "You have already done this?" The ambassador's scale showed surprise. "Retired humans don't waste time waiting for approval," Frank said. "It's our greatest strength." As Frank handed over the datapad with the proposals, his communication device buzzed with new messages from Susan, Joe, and Betty. Everything was going according to plan. No orders given, no approval needed. The Galaxians were beginning to understand what human retirement really meant. When aliens learned that Earth Force's retirement just means they no longer need approval. To 3 days passed since the Galaxians had seen what retired humans could do. The talks moved forward slowly. The aliens no longer made demands. Now, they asked questions, trying to understand. Frank sat across from Ambassador Kaztax in the meeting room on the space station. Linda Powell joined them today, representing Earth's official government. "Your concept of retirement puzzles us," the ambassador said. Its scales showed a mix of yellow and green, thinking and curiosity. "In our society, when one can no longer serve, one steps aside completely." Frank nodded. "That's where we differ. Humans don't retire because they can't serve. They retire because they've earned the right to serve in new ways." The ambassador turned to Linda. "Does your government control these retired individuals?" Linda shook her head. "No. We can ask for their help. We can suggest actions, but we don't control them." "This seems dangerous," the ambassador said. "What stops them from working against Earth's interests?" Frank smiled. "The same thing that made them serve in the first place, their personal commitment to protect Earth and its people." While they talked, Frank received a message from Susan Harris. "Galaxian home fleet movement detected. 6 warships heading toward Proxima Centauri system." Frank showed the message to Linda. Her face remained calm, but her eyes showed concern. "Is something wrong?" the ambassador asked. Frank looked directly at the alien. "Your home fleet is moving toward Proxima Centauri. 6 warships." The ambassador's scales flashed blue, then red, surprise followed by defensive anger. "How do you know this? Our fleet movements are secret." "Nothing is secret to people who built the systems that watch space," Frank said. Susan Harris and her friends continue to notice things that interest them. The ambassador stood. "These ships are just taking standard positions." "Near the exact system we're discussing?" Linda asked. "That seems like pressure, not standard movement." The ambassador's scales settled on dark red. "Your retired humans have shown what they can do. Our empire must show we are not intimidated." Frank nodded slowly. "I understand. Your leaders need to save face." He turned to Linda. "Secretary Powell, I think the ambassador and I need to speak privately again." Linda looked between them. "Are you sure?" "Yes," Frank said. "Nothing official. Just 2 individuals talking." Linda left the room. The ambassador watched her go, then turned back to Frank. "What can you say unofficially that cannot be said officially?" the alien asked. Frank took out his communication device. "I can show you something no active military officer could show you." He pressed a few buttons and handed the device to the ambassador. The Galaxian looked at the screen. Its scales instantly turned white, the color of fear. "This cannot be real," the ambassador said. "It is," Frank said quietly. "What you're seeing is a simulation created by Dr. Peter Cole. He retired from Earth's defense research 10 years ago. Now he studies theoretical physics for fun. This simulation shows what would happen if Earth deployed the Carson Protocol." The ambassador stared at the screen. "The Carson Protocol?" "A defensive system designed but never approved for use," Frank explained. "It was considered too destructive by Earth's government." "This would destroy our entire fleet," the ambassador said, still staring at the simulation. "Yes," Frank agreed, "and Earth's government would never approve its use. They rejected the system years ago." The ambassador looked up, understanding in all 4 of its eyes. "But retired humans don't need approval." Frank took back his device. "Dr. Cole built most of the system before he retired. The parts exist. They were never destroyed, and several of the engineers who worked with him are also retired now." "You would destroy our ships?" The ambassador's voice was quiet. Frank shook his head. "I don't want anyone to die, but I want you to understand what's at stake. Your empire thinks it's dealing with Earth's official forces, limited by rules and approvals. But if your ships fire first, you'll be dealing with Earth's retired veterans, who are bound only by their conscience." Frank stood and walked to the window. Call back the ships, Ambassador. Let's find a solution that works for everyone. The ambassador was silent for a long time. Finally, it touched a device on its wrist and spoke in the Galaxian language. Then it joined Frank at the window. The ships will return to their regular patrol routes, the ambassador said. I have told my government that further study of human retirement is needed before any action. Frank nodded. A wise decision. The next day, Frank met with Linda in her office back on Earth. The Galaxian ship remained in orbit, but the tension had eased. The ambassador has requested a new type of agreement, Linda said. They want to establish direct communication with Earth's retired military community. Frank raised his eyebrows. That's unusual. Very, Linda agreed. They called it a Council of Elders arrangement. They want to know that if we make agreements, the retired community will honor them too. Frank laughed softly. They're learning. Can you help with this? Linda asked. Officially, I can't create a government body of retired personnel. That would defeat the whole point. I'll make some calls, Frank said. Nothing official, just friends talking to friends. That evening, Frank sat on the porch of his cabin in Montana. The sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky orange and red. His communication device connected calls with Susan, Joe, Betty, and a dozen other retired veterans around the world and on colonies in space. The Galaxians are afraid of us, Frank explained to the group. They've never seen a system like ours before. Most aliens haven't, Betty said from her home on the moon. They either have strict control or complete chaos. Our middle path confuses them. What do they want from us? Joe asked. Assurance, Frank said. They want to know that agreements made with Earth's government will be respected by retired veterans too, Susan laughed. They're asking if we'll behave ourselves. Essentially, Frank agreed. I think we need to show them how our system really works. A demonstration of cooperation rather than power, Betty suggested. Frank nodded. Exactly. We show them that while we don't take orders, we do share values. As they talked, a plan formed. Not an official plan, not something that needed approval. Just retired friends agreeing to help in their own ways. The real lesson for the Galaxians was just beginning. They would learn that Earth's greatest strength wasn't weapons or ships or even retired veterans. It was the balance between freedom and responsibility that humans carried with them even after they no longer wore uniforms. When aliens learned that Earth forces retirement just means they no longer need approval. 1 week after the Galaxians requested communication with Earth's retired community, Frank organized a special meeting. The International Space Station created a new meeting room large enough for 20 humans and 10 Galaxians. Frank arrived early and checked that everything was ready. The large round table gave everyone equal position. No head of the table, no place of power. Screens on the window walls showed views of Earth, the Moon, Mars, and distant Proxima Centauri. Nervous? Linda Powell asked as she entered the room. Frank smiled. A little. This has never been done before. The Galaxian Emperor has sent his personal advisor to join the ambassador, Linda said. They're taking this very seriously. As they should, Frank replied. And our people? All 15 have arrived. Different branches, different specialties, all retired. They came because you asked, not because anyone ordered them. The door opened and Susan Harris walked in. Her gray hair was pulled back and she walked with the quiet confidence of someone who had spent decades in intelligence work before retiring to her vineyard. Frank, she said with a warm smile. The room is secure. Betty made sure of it. More. Retired veterans arrived. Joe Martinez came in his casual teaching clothes. Betty Yang joined by video link from the moon. Dr. Peter Cole, creator of the Carson Protocol, arrived looking like the university professor he had become. Others came, too. Retired admirals, generals, intelligence directors, and special forces commanders. The Galaxians entered last. Ambassador Kaztax led the group, followed by a Galaxian with scales that shimmered with gold flecks, the Emperor's advisor. 8 other Galaxians followed, each with markings that showed high rank. Welcome, Frank said to the group. Thank you all for coming to this unofficial gathering. The advisor stepped forward. Unofficial yet important. My emperor wishes to understand this concept of retirement more fully. Frank nodded. That's why we're here, not as representatives of Earth's government, but as individuals who share concerns about the future. The meeting began. Frank introduced each retired human and explained their former roles. The Galaxians did the same, though none of them were retired, a concept still foreign to their culture. In our empire, the advisor explained, one serves until one can no longer serve effectively. Then younger Galaxians take all responsibilities. But that wastes experience, Susan Harris said. The knowledge gained over decades doesn't disappear when someone gets older. Yet without structure, without control, how do you prevent chaos, the advisor asked. What stops one retired human from acting against another's interests? Joe Martinez leaned forward. The same things that guide us during service. Values, principles, honor. Those don't vanish when we retire. The Galaxian ambassador's scales showed doubt, a pattern of blue and green. Yet you showed us that retired humans can act in coordinated ways without orders. This seems dangerous. Dr. Cole spoke up. It can be. The Carson Protocol could destroy your ships, but I would never activate it except to defend Earth from direct attack. Why not? Asked one of the other Galaxians. If you need no approval, what stops you? My own judgment, Dr. Cole said simply, and knowing I would have to live with the consequences. The discussion continued for hours. The Galaxians asked detailed questions. The retired humans answered honestly. No political speeches, no official positions. Just truth. After a break for food, the Emperor's advisor addressed the group. We have studied your human history. Many of your conflicts came from retired military leaders who sought power. Frank nodded. True. That's why our system evolved. Retirement isn't about gaining power. It's about using wisdom without political pressure. Show us how this works, the advisor requested. Our dispute over the Proxima Centauri mining belt remains. How would retired humans resolve this where officials cannot? Frank looked around the table. Each retired human nodded slightly. Very well, Frank said. Let's talk about Proxima Centauri. Openly. For the next 2 hours, they discussed the mining belt. The Galaxians explained their historical claims. The humans shared the history of Earth's exploration and development of the system. The problem, Betty Yang said from her video link, is that both sides need certain minerals from those mines. This isn't about territory. It's about resources. Susan Harris pulled up data on her tablet. Earth ships found these deposits first, but the Galaxian Empire has mines in nearby systems that need the same materials. What if, Joe Martinez suggested, instead of fighting over who controls the belt, we focus on making sure both sides get what they need? The idea grew. The retired humans and Galaxians worked together, drawing maps and making suggestions. No one needed to check with superiors. No one worried about political consequences. Finally, Dr. Cole presented a proposed solution. Earth maintains control of the mining operations, but guarantees 20% of all extracted materials go to the Galaxian Empire at favorable prices. In exchange, Galaxian ships help protect the mining belt from pirates and other threats. The ambassador's scales showed surprise, bright purple. This is fair. Both sides benefit. The Emperor's advisor studied the proposal. My emperor would need to approve this officially, but I personally find it acceptable. Linda Powell, who had stayed quiet during most of the discussion, spoke up. As Earth's official representative, I would need approval from several committees and councils, but this provides a framework we can work with. Frank smiled. And we retired folk? We'll help make it happen because it's the right thing to do. No approval needed. The meeting ended with a new understanding. The Galaxians still seemed puzzled by human retirement, but they now saw its value. As the aliens left, the Emperor's advisor stopped by Frank. In our society, elder Galaxians advise but cannot act. Young Galaxians can act but lack wisdom. You humans have found a middle path that is most effective. Frank nodded. It took us centuries to learn this balance. Young officers follow orders and learn. Older officers give orders but face political limits. Retired veterans act on wisdom without those limits. A dangerous system, the advisor said, but powerful when used wisely. Like most good things in life, Frank replied. After everyone left, Frank and Linda stood alone in the meeting room. Through the window they could see Earth turning peacefully below. Will it work? Linda asked. Frank nodded. The official treaties will take months to finalize, but I suspect retired humans and curious Galaxians will start working together long before that. That's what scares their leaders, Linda said with a small smile. They're afraid their people might learn from us. Good, Frank said. Maybe someday they'll create their own version of retirement. Every species should know the freedom that comes after a lifetime of service. When aliens learned that Earth forces retirement just means they no longer need approval. 3 months passed since the meeting between Earth's retired veterans and the Galaxian delegation. The official treaty between Earth and the Galaxian Empire remained caught in committees and political debates. But on Proxima Centauri, things were already changing. Frank Miller stood on the observation deck of the mining station, Proxima 3. Through the large window, he watched as Earth ships and Galaxian vessels moved smoothly around each other. Workers from both species had started to cooperate without waiting for the official treaty. Susan Harris joined him at the window. Quite a sight, isn't it? 6 months ago, these ships might have fired on each other. Frank nodded. Amazing what happens when people focus on solving problems instead of following procedures. The first shipment of minerals will reach Galaxian space next week, Susan said. 20% of the mined materials, just like we suggested. And Galaxian ships are already helping protect the mining belt, Frank added. 2 pirate vessels were driven away last week. Betty Yang's voice came through the station's communication system. Frank, Susan, you have visitors approaching. A shuttle from the Galaxian flagship. Frank and Susan walked to the docking bay. The station hummed with activity. Human and Galaxian workers moved with purpose, each focused on their tasks. Some humans were active military personnel. Others were civilian contractors. Many were retired veterans who had found new purpose here. The shuttle docked with a soft clang. The airlock door opened, and Ambassador Kazaztax stepped through with the Emperor's advisor. Welcome to Proxima 3, Frank said with a smile. The ambassador's scales showed a mix of yellow and green, thoughtfulness and growing comfort. We came to see the changes for ourselves. Our report seemed difficult to believe. Susan laughed softly. Sometimes seeing is believing. Let me show you around. They toured the mining station. In the control room, retired Earth Navy officers worked alongside young Galaxian technicians. In the processing center, Galaxian engineers had improved the efficiency of Earth systems. None of this is in the treaty yet, the Emperor's advisor noted. These people are working together without official approval. That's the point we've been trying to make, Frank said. Good people don't need constant oversight to do good things. They stopped at the station's small cafeteria. Humans and Galaxians sat together, trying to learn each other's languages and customs. A retired Earth chef had even created foods that both species could enjoy. I have been authorized to share something with you, the advisor said as they sat at a table. Our Emperor has created a new position in our government, Elder Advisor. Frank raised his eyebrows. That sounds like a step toward retirement. It is inspired by your system, the advisor admitted. Older Galaxians who have served with honor can step away from regular duties, but continue to advise and act in special situations. They will need less approval. A good first step, Susan said. It takes time to trust people to act without constant control. The ambassador leaned forward. We have also noticed something concerning. Other alien species have asked about Earth's retired veterans. They fear what happened with us could happen to them. Frank nodded slowly. That's natural. Any new idea can seem threatening. The Centauri have even suggested that Earth's retired veterans should be registered and monitored by galactic authorities, the ambassador said. Susan frowned. That would defeat the entire purpose. We know, the advisor said. Which is why the Galaxian Empire has opposed this suggestion. We have told the Centauri and others that they do not understand what they are asking for. Frank looked surprised. You're defending our system? The advisor's scales showed a pattern Frank had never seen before, ripples of gold and blue. We are defending a truth we have learned, a society that trusts its experienced members to act wisely without constant control is stronger than one that fears them. As they finished their tour, they stopped at the station's newest addition, a shared command center where retired veterans from Earth and elder advisors from the Galaxian Empire would work together to coordinate activities in the Proxima system. This goes beyond our original proposal, Frank said, looking around the room. The best ideas often grow in unexpected ways, the advisor replied. Back on Earth a week later, Frank sat on his porch in Montana. The evening air was cool, and stars began to appear in the darkening sky. His communication device buzzed. Frank here, he answered. It's Linda. Have you seen the news? Frank smiled. About the Centauri ambassador's visit? Yes. They've requested a meeting with Earth's retired veterans similar to what we did with the Galaxians, Linda said. They claim they need to assess the threat level. And what did you tell them? That I have no authority to order such a meeting, Linda replied, but that I would mention it to you and others who might be interested. Frank laughed softly. So now other species want to understand retirement too. It's spreading, Frank. The Galaxians have their elder advisors. The Taurians are talking about creating something similar. Even the Rigelian Concord is asking questions. Frank watched as more stars appeared in the sky. Somewhere up there past those stars was Proxima Centauri. Farther still was the Galaxian homeworld. And beyond that, countless other civilizations, each with their own ways. I'll make some calls, Frank said. Maybe we should meet with the Centauri, not to defend ourselves but to share ideas. Nothing official? Linda asked, and Frank could hear the smile in her voice. Nothing official, Frank agreed. Just retired. People talking to worried aliens, helping them understand. After the call ended, Frank remained on his porch. He thought about all that had happened since his retirement just months ago. He had expected quiet days in his cabin. Instead, he had helped change how two species understood each other. His communication device buzzed again with messages from Susan, Joe, Betty, and others. They had heard about the Centauri too. They had ideas. They had questions. They wanted to help. None of them needed to be ordered. None of them needed approval. They would help because that's what they had always done. Serve others, protect peace, build understanding. Retirement hadn't changed that. It had just freed them to do it in new ways. As the stars filled the night sky, Frank smiled. The lesson that had started with the Galaxians would continue to spread. Other species would learn what humans had known for generations. Retirement didn't mean the end of service. It meant the beginning of service guided by wisdom instead of rules. And that was a powerful idea indeed.